Alrighty, welcome. We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes here, see if anyone else comes along. So I'll probably start at 2:05. So that gives 2 more minutes here. All right, actually, we'll just go ahead and get started now. So, hi everyone, I'm Katherine, and today I'll be talking about data visualization. I did research on this last spring and summer, and so I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what data visualization is and how you can use it with this tool, Observable. So first, before we begin, hopefully you made an account here at observablehq.com. But if you didn't, just go ahead and do that now. It'll only take like a handful of minutes, seconds. And you can go ahead and use GitHub, Twitter, Google, or just your personal email, whatever you prefer. All right, so first, what is data visualization? So it's the graphical representation of data through graphs and other visual images. So here on the left-hand side, you see just your normal pie graph. All the normal data tables you're used to seeing like in your math classes, like a bar chart, a plot, like those all count as data visualization. And then as we move over to the right here, we have the states and this little person who's supposed to represent baby boomers. And these are examples of more image-based visualizations where the colors represent the numbers more than the graph here on the left. So why should you care about data visualization or even bother to learn it? There are a lot of advantages. The first one is big data and how it's on the rise and very present in our current time. Visualizations tell stories to simplify trillions of lines of data. The second and the third, quick glance and increased speed, just are the fact that you can easily glance at it, like on that last slide with the states and the baby boomer. You could easily tell what it was trying to represent, what the largest, most prevalent data was. So these make it really easy to understand lots and lots of data. And then pattern identification and track connections. These are really good for when you need to see patterns or connections between participants of like whatever poll or who the data is about, and then the results and what that data has found. And it allows the human brain to really easily understand that and see that a lot quicker than if you had to read each one line by line. And then clear communication. This is great because if you're looking at a map of the United States, like I had on that first slide, pretty much everybody is going to know what that is and what that means. So you don't have to have a scientific background to understand the data that you're trying to present. So a little bit about Observable. This is the tool that I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make these data visualizations with. It uses JavaScript, but with a few changes. It's a very unique platform that was just created in like 2018, I want to say, off the top of my head. And their whole mission is helping everyone make sense of the world with data. So they're an entirely open source platform all on the web with the goal to make everything very accessible and very easy for everyone to access and understand. So let's go ahead and get started and create a notebook. So here I just have my profile open, and you can go ahead and click create notebook. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here to what we need to be seeing. Alrighty. So yeah, go ahead and click here, create a new notebook. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this one HackPSU Workshop. So is everybody able to make an account and get this open? Go ahead and raise your hand if you're not able to. Okay, cool. I think everybody is all good on this front. So the thing that's really cool about Observable is all the cells are live and run independently. So say we have two variables here, and then we want to know what x plus y is. We can see that it's 1, and they all compile individually. So now if I change y over here, it's going to automatically change in this cell without needing to recompile the whole page. And you can hide the individual blocks by clicking the little pin here on the side. So if it's blue, you can see the code. If it's not, you can't. And then if you want to put text into your notebook, this MD here stands for markdown, and then you can write anything you want. And then these little dash things are not a single quote. They're a little like down slash thing on your keyboard if you can find it. And so you can do anything you can do in pretty much any normal language. You can do basic algebra. You can write a block of code. So this let tells us to make a variable, and you do need semicolons. And let's just go ahead and make a little loop here to demonstrate our first idea. All right, so for those of you guys familiar, we set x equal to 0 and then we incremented by 10. So why doesn't this block of code return 10? It returns 0. So that's a little tricky thing about Observable, is that it's always going to return just the first value, the first return statement, whatever the value of x is. And it's not going to keep updating. So the cell just stops after the return line. Whereas if we wanted to have this return 10, we would have to do like so. And we'll just leave that blank. That's how you make a comment. And then here is where we would want to return x. So does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions on that? Okay, I'll go ahead and keep going then. So next is how to make a variable. So this x here, let's just go ahead and delete this for lack of confusion. So if I was going to try to access x from these blocks, I am not allowed to do that because they're in these curly brackets. So like I said, all the cells, these blocks where you can write, are independent. But if I set a new variable outside of this cell, let's just call it C, that C can be accessed anywhere I want because it's not in a designated block as said by these curly brackets. And then the next thing is how to make a function. So let's just make our add 10 function. X is less than 10, plus. Just leave that like it was. All right, now, oops. We have our function. So if we want to call add 10 on C, boom, it adds 10. So those are just the basic fundamentals. If you're aware, of JavaScript and other programming language, most of this shouldn't come as a surprise. So let's get into the actual visualization. The visualization. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need is we're going to be using a library called D3, which in Observable, you can just like essentially import with this line here. And if you get this where it's like a little caret and then object and all that, that means you did it correctly and you're all good on that front. So the next thing that we're going to need is the data that we're actually going to implement. So we're just going to go ahead and make a simple array. So the way I was thinking of doing this is doing by how many people you know in each state. So I'm from California. So the name of the state that I'm from is California. And then the value is going to be 4 because I know me, my mom, my dad, my brother from California, and those are the only people I know in the state. And then we're going to put in this scale that we will define in a little bit. So let's put a scale of 5. And then go ahead and just add as many people in as many states as you want. Pennsylvania, that's where Penn State is located. Let's say I know 7 people from Pennsylvania, just guessing here. And then we go ahead and close out with this little bracket. And then you can see all of our objects here in this array. All right. Is everyone good on that front? All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, so we're making what is known as a bubble chart on Observable. And so each object here is gonna be a bubble, and the diameter of that bubble is going to be the value. So the more people we know in that state, the bigger the bubble, the less people, the smaller the bubble. And if you know nobody in the state, it's not even gonna show up. So a function that we're going to need for this is called pack, which is in the D3 library. So here we're setting data to be the parameter for pack. That's what saying pack equals data, and then it's from d3.pack. So we're nicknaming it pack instead of just calling d3.pack to begin with. And then we need to know the size. So we're going to go ahead and set a width and a height. And then obviously we haven't set those to anything yet. So let's go ahead and say width is 800. And because we just want our box to be a square, we're going to say height is equal to width. And then we're going to want to know how close we want our circles to be. So this pack function is what places all the circles in relative to each other. So we're going to say 3 is the distance we want the circles to be apart from. And then next is this thing called D3 hierarchy, which is essentially the data that we're putting in, and all our circles are children of the bubble chart. So that's all this line is doing here. And then the last thing we are going to need is dot sum. And this is what puts everything, all the values of each circle into this function so it knows how big to make everything. All right, and now we're gonna go ahead and start. Oh wait, one more thing. We're gonna need the color. So what color do you want your circles to be? So you can pick any color. You can put in any of the, I think it's HTML colors. So you can do steel blue, red, orange, any of the RGB values that you're aware of. All right, now how does this all come together? Chart. So we're just gonna name this big giant thing chart. This is where it's all gonna show up. So the first thing you need is to call that pack function and pass in our data array here that we just made. And then we want this to be unchanging. So that's why we put this constant here, and I just named it root by convention. And so we have these things called SVGs, which are these circles. So we're going to call d3.create SVG. And now it needs to know some attributes about these circles. So that's what this .attr is. And so the first attribute is the view box, which is the square that the whole thing is going to take up. So we got 0, 0 width and height. And so these are just going to be the dimensions. Start at 0, 0, top left corner, and then it's going to be our width and our height, the same as what we put into our pack. So that way everything works out. And then we want the font size to be something legible. And then it needs to know, because we're eventually going to put in text onto these circles, like we're going to label them California, Pennsylvania, etc. So it needs to know where to put these circles in relation to everything else. So that's this text anchor. And we just want them in the middle of each circle, nothing too fancy. All right, now we're going to go ahead and actually put these circles in. So svg.select all G. And so this select all tells it to take any SVG, which is this what we just made here, and we're just nicknaming it G. So that's what that part is. And the next thing we're going to need is the actual data, and we're putting it in root as a subcategory leaves. And we're going to go ahead and put join them all together. So this is a lot of just attributes about it. I'm going to just paste this in here. So this is telling it where to put the circles. And then now we're going to go ahead and append each leaf as a circle. Attribute. So we need to ID it. And there's this fancy little thing here, which is just essentially saying that's the leaf that we want. And then we need to set the radius. And so this is just saying take the radius that we already set up here as the value from our original array. And then we want the fill, because this isn't going to be an outline of a circle. So we need the fill opacity. We're just going to make it 0.7, just whatever number you want, doesn't matter too much. And then the fill itself. And then this is where that color that you set earlier comes in. All right, and then one more thing, we're going to append on the text to label this. So we're going to again select all. And this is going to be text. This is what we're calling it. And then we need to know what data we're getting this text from. So that's, again, just going to be from our array, d.data.name. And now this part here is simply going to tell it to put the text horizontally and then separate the two lines. All right, and then one last thing is this join function, and we want to join the text. And so it needs to know where to put this, which we're just going to specify with x coordinates and y coordinates. Which hopefully this part is self-explanatory, but if not, let me know. And then this is going to be just a little math function here. Oops. And then what the actual text is. And then we want to return our whole thing. And then this should be leaves with an S. And ta-da, we've got two circles here. And notice how Pennsylvania is significantly bigger than California. All right, so that is the gist of it. Now, obviously, we only have two circles here, when in reality, you would be working with significantly larger data sets, and you would have a lot more circles here. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste in here a lot bigger data set. So these are all 50 states to give you an idea of what a much larger data set would look like. So the key thing to notice here is that all of the radiuses are based upon our whatever number we put in here. So obviously, like Tennessee is going to be bigger than South Dakota. And then they all center around the first node that you entered. So for us, that's Alabama, because these are in alphabetical order. So they're all going to be centered around Alabama, as the pack does. And yeah, and as you add more data, this can get a lot more complicated, and you can pack bubble charts within bubble charts within bubble charts to linearly scale your data. All right. So there you go. There's our chart. Are there any questions about this? All right. If not, that's all I have for you guys today. This is a quick one. I'll stick around for a little bit if anyone wants to chat or have some questions. Otherwise, thanks for coming. All right, I'm not seeing questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Thanks everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your weekend. Happy hacking.